Hi, today we are going to talk about the regulatory perspective of the ICH Q11 guide. This guide was set for the development and manufacturing of the drug substance. So what has happened to our regulatory environment since this guide was published almost 10 years ago? First, and the obvious, complexity. We are getting more questions, and these questions are becoming more complex and scientific. Second, a term that we hear all the time now, control strategy. Actually, we've heard this one before Q11, but then it mostly referred to the API control. Now we are talking about control of the quality within the process and starting from earlier steps than before. This relates also to the request of redefinition of starting material that we see more and more, asking for control of the process under GMP in multiple synthetic steps than before. Let's focus a bit about this starting material. So before ICH Q11, we had ICH Q7 GMP guide. This one led us to the starting material requirements. First, starting material should be incorporated into the API molecule as an important structure element. It should be fully characterized and controlled in terms of identity, assay, impurities, defined in the chemical literature, better not to be a new entity or a tailor-made material, should be commercially available and used in other industries. And also produced by a simple chemistry, one which is well defined in the literature. But now, post-ICH Q11, we are expected for the following. So first, all that we had before as defined by the Q7. But now we should also consider the following. Enough of the drug substance manufacturing process should be described in order to understand how impurities are formed in the process. We also need to discuss about changes, how these changes in the process could affect the formation of impurities. All manufacturing steps that could have impact on the impurity profile should be included. Last but not least, description of how the proposed specification of each starting material will contribute to the overall control strategy of the API. Then, the reason for this increase of request for redefinition, as published by the authorities in their top 10 questions deficiency letters, is becoming clear. We are expected for more. So how can we do it? How can we choose our starting material wisely? A few important parameters to notice. First is structure. Is it a complex one or a simple one? If it's a complex one, consider. Then we need to think if it's fully characterized material. We need to know what we are holding in hand. Then we will go to process. Is it produced by a simple chemistry? Where is the optical resolution performed? Preferably it should be under GMP. Where is this starting material placed in the synthesis? Is it an advanced intermediate or a simple early material? And where GMP is starting from? After that, availability. Is it a commercially available material, a commonly used one, or a tailor-made material? And the most important parameter is control. Is the starting material specification covering all potential process impurities? What about solvents, elemental impurities, our new trend, nitrosamines, potential isomers in the structures? We will need to understand how these react in the starting material and how we control them in our process. And eventually our process ability to control or either purge all process impurities coming from the starting material. These parameters, considered together, can lead us to making the right choice. Next interesting topic is the gray areas in the ICH Q11 guide. We would have expected that after 10 years in the market, the industry would understand how to implement this guide in their development and manufacturing. But by the multiple additional publications that we see, the clarity is still questionable. Some examples for this publication, let's take FDA, publishing the understanding of the ICH Q11 guide. Then we see multiple question and answer guides and then additional or new question and answer publications coming from the same authorities. And I think that the one that I've liked most is the ICH Q11 question and answers. The saga continues. But where you have a gray, really, you have an opportunity. So actually the guide has created a space for the industry to develop their process and its control with a new generated flexibility based on Science. So now we can define a design space and allowed ranges for operation. We can set different limits and control for each process step. We can outline critical and non-critical parameters. This will be an important tool. This is also encouraging the industry to rely upon development which is based on understanding of the process, and also, and not less important, on experience. In terms of the regulatory aspects, the drug master file, if the flexibility is well described in the DMF, it can, in the pre-approval phase, support the review in terms of the process control strategy, justify it, and then reduce deficiencies. In the post-approval phase, it's even more critical because it can assist us in the lifecycle management. Let's take implementation of a process change. A change where it's proved that there is no effect on the quality. Not necessarily the change classification will change. It will not. But it will be easier to justify the change and get approval. A nice example for this flexibility created can be, for example, limits of impurities. Today, I can start my process by setting high limit for an impurity in starting material. Let's be bold and say 10%. But by my understanding of the process and its ability to purge and purify or even eliminate this impurity in the process step, I can demonstrate that eventually my API is pure. This is giving me the possibility not to start with strict limits as before, since I have the understanding of my process purification abilities. I think that this is our main benefit from this guide. An interesting aspect which I would like to share with you is how ICH Q11 is viewed in the eyes of US, Europe, and Japan. So these three sat together and created this guide. But after a while, something happened. When we examine the questions received from each region, we see something interesting. Each of them has chosen a different focus area, all taken from the same guide. US will ask you questions about control strategy. Europe will focus about starting material, their justification, redefinition. And Japan is focused on development, process development and control, as we know it, CQA, CPPs. Yet, for Teva API, for our drug substances, which are submitted globally, eventually when we are completing all these reviews coming from all these regions, all aspects will be defined and covered in the regulatory files. Continuing in that direction for the trend analysis, we also wanted to analyze the trend in deficiency letter for the terms commonly used in the ICH Q11. So, for example, we can take a look of the term control strategy. We see a major increase coming from all regions starting from around 2015. But we see another extensive growth in the past 2 and 3 years. The same will also go to the basic term ICH Q11. So when we search for it, we see that it is referred more and more in the review letters. It means that implementation is expected to be presented in our regulatory files. And last, if you remember, this was the superstar of the ICH Q11 when it was first published. This was the term design space. But we saw actually a decrease, and now I can tell you that in the past 3 years, it disappeared. Nobody is asking about it, and we didn't see it in any of the letters received recently. Why? Maybe because we all, industry and agencies, still don't understand how to deal with this one properly and implement it correctly. But there could be other additional reasons, of course. So to summarize, what can we share from our regulatory learning process about the ICH Q11? First, the ICH Q11 is to be used as a default. You need to discuss your control strategy, and this is a rising star. All impurities, probable and theoretical, should be evaluated and discussed. Well-defined critical quality attributes, CQAs, and critical process parameters, CPP. When you come to choose your starting material, do it according to your process ability to control and purify its process impurities. The days where we used to count steps from starting material to API, these are over. Carry over studies. The more the merrier. And the essence of it all, in my opinion, is this quality being built into the process rather than focusing on the default final API quality. This is a new era. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and contact us if you have any question.